Hello and welcome back to Highlight with Karhlyle Fletcher. I'm your host, Karhlyle Fletcher, and this is episode 14. Today we're going into Delta-8 THC, the Tao Te Ching, and then miscellaneous Midwest emo music that I have permission to use. Because, you get permission to use music. That's important. Anyways, end of the week. Have fun. Let's get into it. So, this is Cannabis Tech. This is a paper that we've talked about before, and this is my work again. But Delta-8 is, I would say, one of the least understood trends. Basically, so it's a loophole that allows for Delta-8 THC to be sold and like in markets that aren't already legal. So the 2018 Farm Bill legalized all hemp production and everything in the composition of hemp other than Delta-9 THC, of which hemp must contain below 0.3%. This was standard. However, every other cannabinoid was considered legal, and Delta-8 is one of these cannabinoids. So consumer appeal for Delta-8 THC relies on the fact that this novel cannabinoid, like Delta-9 THC, is psychoactive. However, reported use claim that the effects of Delta-8 THC are markedly different than Delta-9 THC. Although this is interesting to note, the demand for cannabinoid has yet to be made clear. Additionally, other novel cannabinoids, such as CBG, have found biomass value drop 82% over the last year. While interest in these substances peak at introduction, allowing them at higher prices than traditional THC and CBD products, the inflated price of Delta-8 THC products will likely follow the set patterns of the patterns set by previous novel cannabinoids. So, when you see something that's not THC or CBD get big on the market, it's going to be really expensive and really popular for a couple of months as everybody like rushes to try to include it, and then that's going to make like a gold mine, which will inflate the price further and further until eventually the bubble just bursts, and then it all goes down, and then it's like essentially properly priced. But then that leaves farmers and producers with like all of this extra product that they have no idea how they're going to offload. So that's kind of difficult. But so Machulam actually did a study decades ago where he was talking about Delta-8 THC as an isomer of Delta-9 THC, the major natural constituent of cannabis, from which it differs only in the position of the double bond. The stereochemistry of the two isomers is identical. Their chemical behavior is in most cases very similar. Their metabolism in vivo and in vitro follow the same pathways. The major chemical difference between them is that Delta-9 THC is easily oxidized to the biologically inactive cannabinol. Delta-8 THC is stable, does not oxidize to cannabinol, and has a very long shelf life. Due to their close structural similarity, Delta-9 THC and Delta-8 THC present essentially identical pharmacological profiles. Quantitatively, however, Delta-8 THC differs from Delta-9 in being about twice less potent in most, but not all, pharmacological tests. So they were focusing on cancers, and they were trying to treat that with Delta-8 and Delta-9. The dosage of Delta-8 THC completely prevented nausea and delayed nausea throughout treatment, while they would have expected the patients to vomit in most treatments without it. So it has traditionally clinical value. It is able to help with like nausea and things like that. It is a useful substance. But what is it? It's a novel cannabinoid. So how are cannabinoids made? So this is another article on Cannabis Tech. This is by Jessica McKeel. Sorry if it's Mac, but Jessica McKeel. And so, as she explains, all cannabinoids begin their lives as CBGA, or cannabigerolic acid. Called the mother of all cannabinoids, this compound evolves throughout the course of the plant's growth cycle into every natural cannabinoid known today, from THC to CBD and beyond. So, what you do is you start with CBGA, and if you want any sort of cannabinoid, whether that's CBG, CBC, CBD, or THC, what you want to make the plant transfer as much of that, or create as much of those cannabinoids out of that substance that it can. So I think a spider just went on my computer fan. Fascinating. It's a nature show now. So it's the idea of this. All plants start with this. This is like what they're growing when they're in the cycles of becoming productive, and then you can basically convince the plant to use CBGA in certain things and prioritize it in certain things. Now they're doing that to make it make Delta-8 THC. Another way of doing it, rather than starting with the acid, is converting CBD into Delta-8. And it's converting cannabinoids has been around for a long time, but basically, as Jessica's laid out here, the 5 steps are dissolving it into a solvent. So Delta-8 requires a non-polar organic solvent, which is different than other extraction methods, like heptane. You add an acid into the solvent, maintain the mixture at 100 degrees Celsius while continually stirring for 18 hours. Popular solvents include alumina acid washed and various acids, all known as Lewis acids. And then there's, all the different things, but 1 to 18 hours is the process of doing this. And the thing is that it could also produce different byproducts and leave a variety of residues requiring cleanup. And then it's washed and dried and then tested, and then that's where you're getting this, is that so the acid and the solvent combination with the CBD converts it over to Delta-8 THC. So it's just like it's a chemical reaction that you have, and then you have that, and then you clean up the substance, and then you basically isolate what you have, and then you test it and see what you're left with. The issue that this is having, Kristina actually did this is something by the person who runs Cannabis Tech, by Kristina Etter, and she did an interview with a person who, with Josh Swider, CEO and co-founder of Infinite Cal, who does a lot of testing. And one of the things that they were talking about is these byproducts, and is this process of converting CBD to Delta-8 THC. And I think it's like highly important to talk about, like, yeah, there are things that are being produced by this reaction that we simply are not familiar with. So I'm just going to play a few clips from that video, and obviously highly recommend the Cannabis Tech channel. I've worked with them for a long time, years. Love them. Cannot support them enough. But yeah, so the most relevant sections, I want to start at 10:20.
And what you're creating is a lot of side products.
There we go. So let's just get back to...
That's where they're starting to get Delta-8. So we started seeing this a couple of years ago as people going ahead and taking their CBD, and they would get bad yield. So what I mean by that is they would start with a kilo of CBD, and then they would only create 50 grams of Delta-8, and that's a bad yield. But then they actually these people would not get high conversion. So what I mean by that is, well, their whole goal is to go to Delta-8, but they create a whole bunch of other stuff, and they only get this small yield of Delta-8. So there's a couple things going on with it. And what we saw back 2 years ago, people would call us and be like, I guarantee it's all Delta-8. I did this conversion, and it's 1-to-1. I read it on YouTube or Twitter, or whatever the social media things are. They're reading these things on these, Reddit maybe. And it's not. And that's one thing I always find it intriguing as an analytical chemist to look into these. So I pull chromatograms myself. I get on these phone calls to hear people's opinions. And what you're creating is a lot of side products. I mean, this is chemistry. It's one, you can't just mix two things and get whatever you want just because you want it. The wants, and what you need to do is to do some more work on it. So people have been working on it for a while and getting better at it. So we start to see the less number of side products produced, or higher yields. I mean, I remember people used to create 70% Delta-8, 30% Delta-9. You'd start seeing when the people would convert from Delta-9 to Delta-8. But they've kind of changed it by starting with the new material, the CBD. But they are getting a lot of different side products. So what's interesting is we have seen some people that have been doing this for a while. I would say are better at doing this, at taking CBD and going to Delta-8. And we've seen stuff up to 90%. From that initial reaction, which is actually impressive, and I commend them as a chemist to doing that kind of thing. But they always have the final step is some kind of chromatography step or some kind of cleanup step. And what I mean by that is, well, 90% was Delta-8, let's get rid of the other stuff, so then we go with a higher Delta-8 percentage. Or they clean up, and you can tell these things just by looking at a basic chromatogram rather than a diode array detector. We do full scans and we look at all of it, and it's just always interesting when you start to see I'm going to say a rainforest, or is you're going to see peaks everywhere, just peak, 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 and then the primary peak of Delta-8. But then you see the rest of them, and you're like, well, that's 1% there, that's 3%, and we look for 21 different cannabinoids that we know of, and it doesn't match up with any of those other 21, but there's still 100 in there. So what are all those compounds? So that's the thing as an analytical chemist, why we came into this whole industry and started that Infinite Chemical Analysis Labs.
So, well, I'll let him finish what he was saying, but that's what I really wanted to highlight, is that this is a person who does literal testing. They're seeing conversions that are up to like 90% of what you want, but again, there's still that 10% left of like, what are we looking at? And like, the things aren't coming up for the popularly tested for compounds, so they're kind of, it's unsure of what they are.
Was public safety, guys. I mean, you got to remember, they're doing a chemistry reaction here, and they're creating byproducts that nobody knows what they are, or no one wants to pay to find out what they are. I'll get a call and be like, hey, just tell me what everything is. I'll give you $50. Not a $50 job, guys. This is possibly a month or 2, 3 months of work by PhD chemists and labs and spending money on everything else. It's not an easy task, and we've done a lot of this work on the side just to find out for ourselves so we can isolate things. I mean, we did this a long time ago with Delta-8, before we were looking at Delta-8. We started looking at Delta-8 before we could buy standards for Delta-8. So these are those things that's always interesting, is to stay ahead of the game and really look at what you're creating. So
yeah, I think that is a incredible point by this guy, by Josh, because it is, it's highly important to just be aware of what consumers are buying and what's going on with, what's on the market. And that's where Delta-8 THC by itself is not any cause for concern, but Delta-8 THC products, what are they? What are they? How are they being produced? Are the people who are producing it reliable? Are they a functional company? Can you trace back the company? Do they have COAs? Are those COAs certified? Are they working regularly with third-party testing companies? If all of those pass, you're likely going to have a safe product. If not, I wouldn't.
In stores, and these are being produced by companies. And so the question that really kind of lingers in my mind is, who's going to be the company that produces the product that trips the trigger? So like we talked about on the other interview, in 2019, we had the vitamin E vape crisis, where people started getting sick from vape cartridges, and it really brought a lot of scrutiny into the industry. It brought a lot of negative headlines into the industry, and I fear poor chemistry in the production of Delta-8 THC causing the same thing at some point. And unfortunately, like you said, we have this opportunity to show integrity. We have this opportunity to do things right and put ethics before profits. But unfortunately, with, like you said, the decline in the price of CBD, people are kind of scrambling. They're not getting the returns that they wanted. And so Delta-8 kind of produces a temptation, I think, to increase that bottom line. And that disappoints me more than anything about the cannabis industry, is because I think that that's what we tried to avoid. I mean, that's why a lot of us came to the cannabis industry, to avoid pharmaceuticals and kind of the shadiness that was going on there with the opiate epidemic. And now we get into this selling a product just for profit without really knowing what's in it. Does it make it any better because it's hemp? I don't think it does. And so that's kind of my ethical dilemma with what's going on right now.
yeah, I completely agree. I know that.
Yeah, I mean, it does kind of undo the work of a lot of activism, where it's like the entire point is giving people something that allows them to have their own, it allows them to have agency over what they're putting in their body. And, like the idea that the industry will step back because a bunch of people have CBD, which has decreased in value, and they will convert it to Delta-8, and we don't know what that does. If that creates something that goes badly and then that hits the industry, God fucking damn it.
Cannabis is used a lot of times as an alternative to a lot of the products, and it does a great job. It's just now we're synthetically modifying or converting, whatever we want to call it, in doing a chemistry. So one thing that pharmaceutical companies look at is what's happening when they create a product, what their side products are they dangerous? So until we can start looking at everything as a big picture and not just saying, hey, I mostly created this, now I can sell it, we should really look into it, because we're no longer taking a plant and consuming that plant when these are undergoing these processes. We're taking a hemp plant and doing whatever we want to call it to create a different compound. And there's going to be some things that happen. It doesn't seem like right now, I mean, I've not heard of any horrible negative effects for it, but I believe we're just in the beginning. I mean, people were, the vitamin E acetate thing, I think we saw vitamin E acetate in 2017 because people were buying kilos of distillate and being like, oh, this guy will sell it to me for half the price of this guy. And it was really just 70% Delta-8, or excuse me, vitamin E acetate, and then it would only be 30% Delta-9 THC. And then people would ask us, what is it? And as chemists, analytical chemists, and other chemists in my facility, we all are curious. So we don't even, we just take that material and find out. We can run full scans.
So that's like the thing is that we do have. So I think there's a major disconnect between recreational culture and technical reality, where it's like you do have these people who are literal analytical chemists who are breaking down these substances, looking at what's going on. And if anybody's going to be able to raise a warning sign or like tell us what is happening, it's probably going to be them. Probably should pay attention to what they have to say. Yet they're not really a part of the mainstream conversation, at least in like youth culture and like things like that, which I think is a major shame. I think that if they were given more credit, it would help normalize safety and responsibility in the community immediately. Because like there is like that's the thing of why you want to trust experts. It's not because they have credentials, but it's because they do serious work and they do real work.
Tests, we have access to every kind of type of analytical equipment that we would ever need to figure these things out. And we told people with vitamin acetate years beforehand. We didn't realize how bad it would be. People would be like, should I sell that? And we're like, no, you shouldn't. You shouldn't consume vitamin acetate. What happens when you inhale it? And then they're like, okay, true, yeah, we're going to destroy it. I hope they destroyed it, but the thing is, it took, I would say, a year or two before we saw that vape scare stuff. Before I saw vitamin E acetate and determined people were doing that. So people making this Delta-8 stuff, is it safe? I don't know. Could it take a year or two before something comes about this? Sure. It's just all about production methods and then someone trying to get a cheaper price or make more of a dollar. And
Yep. And this will be the rounding off of the clip.
As a consumer level, there are allowable limits of contaminants in
Okay, I can actually back that up because
traceable COAs. I mean, ours have QR codes from 5 in the morning till 11 at night. So that not me. I'm saying my business phones. So those are those things you look for, and that's one thing we've been seeing with these Delta-8 things. Is we get certificates of analysis all the time. Check those certificate analysis. I mean, that's what consumers should be doing, right? Ask them for it. Oh, we don't have one. Well, okay, you didn't test it. You didn't test it for safety. Maybe I don't want.
So he's discussing the due diligence of the patient, and it's like as a consumer, you should be comfortable going into a dispensary and asking for a COA, which is a certificate of analysis, which is a chemical analysis of what you're buying. But this, Josh will tell you, Josh Swider will tell you, he goes into a dispensary, asks for a COA, bud tender doesn't even know what that is, which just marks a cultural issue in that people should be aware of what, basically the regulation and basically the process of making these products consumer grade. They should be more informed about that so that they are actually able to hold companies accountable, hold businesses accountable, and hold themselves accountable for responsibly consuming things. If people don't know how to give people access to that information, that's a major red flag.
On a consumer product, but you will find companies out there that do. I am a third-party testing lab. Sadly, I will not promote my clients that are doing things right because I am a third-party testing lab. I am not here to make someone money. I think that's what a lot of this industry and the cannabis testing industry has gotten lost in, is they promote their clients. I mean, I will not do that just because it's not my job. But if you ask for their COA and you see my name and that we're out here doing this stuff right, traceable COAs. I mean, ours have QR codes on them. You can take a picture of the QR code and they'll bring you up to our secure website where to have the actual results. I've seen a million times the QR codes removed and the 10% Delta-8 became 100% Delta-8 because they edited a piece of paper. That's very possible. It's not impossible to do. I mean, anyone can edit a PDF. One other thing, just make sure it matches. I mean, we've seen people put 100% Delta-8 on it, and then you take a picture of the QR code, and it goes and says 5% Delta-8. I mean, that's one of those things, is just doing a little bit of due diligence. I mean, even in the cannabis industry, I feel it can be a little difficult to get that too. I've walked into cannabis retailers and asked, "Can I see the COA for this product?" And then the bud tender or whoever's selling it says, "What's a COA?" And I'm like, that's alarming. You should be able to, as a consumer, request these things. I mean, even at that, as a consumer level, there are allowable limits of contaminants in all of the material. It is allowable. There's action levels that are determined by where they pull them. It's still being figured out, but action levels pulled out of other industries saying, hey, I can consume this much pyrethrin. Okay, well, I'm a consumer. I don't want to consume any pyrethrin. Well, I could look at the COA and determine if it has any in there. And you should be doing this as a cannabis consumer or a hemp consumer. I mean, the client or the end users or the end purchasers or the people driving it. If you guys start asking for, hey, I want to see heavy metal analysis on my Delta-8, or I want to see pesticides on my Delta-8 to make sure I'm not getting anything dirty, they would need to start doing that. But until the call for safe products by the consumer is being done to the manufacturers, it's not going to be done.
So basically, unless there's consumer or economic pressure, companies and markets will not change. So until the consumer starts caring about certifications of analysis, safe cannabis, not having exposure to pesticides, not having exposure to heavy metals and all of these things, we're not going to see a change in the market. It's going to have to take pressure from the people spending money. You know, there was like 10 billion in the last decade made by Colorado, so even less than that. But anyways, last thing to just wrap up on, just to show something else. Just wanted to highlight the Code for America's work, where it is. So Delta-8, important to understand on a consumer level, because you have to know what you're putting in your body. And it's just, you know, stay safe, it's trendy, know what you're doing, know how it's being made, and understand that a lot of people are trying to offload CBD, so they're going to be tempted to change that over. And look at the chemical analysis. We don't even know what the chemical analysis means right now, so just, I would say good luck with it. As always, smoking weed is kind of figured out, you know, so I would trust that one. But Code for America is using the legal changes in the country and algorithms, so essentially AI programs, to automate record clearance. So first off, expunging records for people, but second off, also getting people who have reduced sentences via law changes. So like people who've been pardoned from prison, they just automatically serve the paperwork for them to get them out, and just let that, they make that as easy as possible, rather than you know, them having to do the work, where it's like, it's not necessarily their, just because you're arrested doesn't mean that you're a lawyer, you know. So for people who don't have the necessary or for the people who just aren't informed, programs like this really help give them the privileges, or not privileges, but like the rights that changes in legislation have been secured for them. So I just wanted to highlight their work and saying that that's awesome. This was 2019, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, so that's the Delta-8. Be careful. That's a wrap up on that. Just wanted to finish off the basics week with that. Now we got the Tao Te Ching, which I feel like is also fitting. So let's just go into the Eastern philosophy. Yeah, that's going to be a natural pivot. So first one, the Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. The unnameable is the eternally real. Naming is the origin of all particular things. Flee from desire, you realize the mystery. Caught in desire, you see only the manifestations. Yet mystery and manifestations arise from the same source. This source is called darkness. Darkness within darkness, the gateway to all understanding. So, breaking down, not to say that I fucking understand, because, you know, whatever, I just love this book and I've read it a few times, but the Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. The name that cannot be named is not the eternal name. It reminds me heavily of Yahweh, which is I am what I am. which is essentially saying that I have no name. So it's the idea that, I mean, one of my favorite edgy positions is that language was a mistake, and that we should have just been monkey, because it's easier to be an animal. And I feel like that is also where religion speaks to that truth and saying that there is no proper name for God, there is no proper name for the deity, there is no proper name for the Tao, because what can be told and what can be named is abstract. Language is inherently abstract. It's not real. It's not divine, because it's something that is a byproduct of us. You know, if we're a chemical reaction, language and the experience and the processing of it is something that is I don't know exactly the word I'm looking for, but it's a byproduct of us. It's derivative of us. So therefore, it can't be the realest thing, because we're realer than it. So there has to be some, you know. I feel like that's kind of where, that's what that entry stanza reminds me of. The unnameable is the eternally real. Naming is the origin of all particular things. So, like, again, the unnameable is what was first. Before humanity, there was no language. Unnameable things are natural. Unobserved things are natural. Life kind of exists separate from humans, and then we have our perspective and our stories about them. But that's not the same thing as the actual unnameable. Naming is the origin of all particular things. It's like when you're making a map and you give things a name. So it's like there was a thing on Twitter that was about this like dad who like takes walks with his kid, and like it's like a field, and he like draws maps, and he like every time the kid names something, he like he draws it in as a little landmark, you know. So it's the idea of that, like, just because his child is giving these things names, you know, like now they're things, now they have like their own story, and like his child's building their own mythos by just exploring and wandering around and getting to partake in the myth making. But that is also what it, you know, it's like to name something is to make sense of it, but to make sense of something is to now make it abstract, because you're making an idea, not what it is itself. The thing is not the name, but the name is your myth, it's your culture about it. Free from desire, you realize the mystery. If you don't want anything, what the fuck's the point? Why are people doing shit? It's kind of absurd. It's kind of funny. Caught in desire, you only see the manifestations. So, like, when you do want things, and when you're plugged into society, and you have these, like, you know, hunger, lust, you know, like, just the desire for power, like, all these things, then you think society's real. You think that history is real. You think that time is real. You think that all of these things, the manifestations, are actual existence. And, like, the idea of what people, like, you know, you start thinking of the zeitgeist as a physical thing, and not just the passing of time, and like what people kind of, it's kind of like the fashion of people throughout the decades. It's not it's you know, it's like that's what people care about, but it's not really the unnameable. Yet mystery manifestations arise from the same source. This source is called darkness. From everything comes from nothing, kind of. I mean, I don't really know. Darkness within darkness, the gateway to all understanding. I would say, so the way I'm interpreting this, I could be wrong, is essentially ego death, where it's like the darkness within darkness is getting away from language, getting away from consciously processing life, and just accepting it for what it is, and living in flow, living without resistance, living without trying to structure it in the same way. So that's one. Let's go to two now. When people see some things as beautiful, other things become ugly. When people see some things as good, other things become bad. Being and non-being create each other. Difficult and easy support each other. Long and short define each other. High and low depend on each other. Before and after follow each other. Therefore the master acts without doing anything, and teaches without saying anything. Things arise, and she lets them come. Things disappear, and she lets them go. She has, but doesn't possess. Acts, but doesn't expect. When her work is done, she forgets it. That is why it lasts forever. So, the first stanza is about dualism and separation. So it's like when you think something is beautiful, you think something is ugly. And when something is good, something is bad. The existence of a positive has to create the existence of a negative. So, when you start judging things, you inherently make implicit judgments about other things, where it's like, you know, it's like man, I really like monorails. That's kind of a slight against steam engines. That is a strange example, but that's what I had offhand. You know what? I'm sticking with it. Being and non-being create each other. Difficult and easy support each other. Long and short define each other. High and low depend on each other. Before and after follow each other. So again, like these concepts of things, you can't have one thingness without the other thingness. You can't really define being without non-being. You can't really define difficult without easy. These things, like, it's the tension between the extremes that allow for the concepts to exist. So therefore, it's like, while creating these separations, while creating judgment, you create these separations, but these separations are actually redefined by each other and are therefore a unison. And so, like, therefore the master acts without doing anything and teaches without saying anything, because there's not, like, when you have good, you have evil. So if you create good, you create evil. But if you simply act without judgment, then you're just flowing. You're just allowing life to exist as life is. You're not forming it into your image. You're not trying to exude projection and mastery over it. You're just allowing it to be. And, like, that's the idea of mastery, is existing with the world, not existing over the world. You know, so that's what, like, the flow. Things arise and she lets them come. Things disappear and she lets them go. I get dust to dust, etc. You know, it's like when things come to you, you should use them, but when things go from you, I mean, it is all material. You know, it's like the state of the world is change. So it's like getting things and losing things is kind of just what you have to accept. And so, like, the further you get to what would be mastery would be just accepting that, you know, hopefully you can make good things and hopefully you can hold on to them, but also it's not bad when you can't. That is just life. She has but doesn't possess, acts but doesn't expect. Again, you have what you have, but it's not define. It does not define you, and you're not defined with it. It's not your item. It's an item that is in your possession, not your possession. You know, it's like, it's strange. It's in your possession. You don't possess it. Acts but doesn't expect. Honestly, I feel like I would need to look at a few translations to get that, but I'm assuming it's basically just, yeah, you know, it's like you're acting without that pre-recognition of good and evil or the payment out that you get from that. Because morality usually comes down to people wanting things. You know, you generally are a good person to get to heaven. You're generally following morality to fit into society. You're generally doing these things to signal for people to do things for you. But acting without that assumption, then you're simply just doing good. You know, if you're doing good for no reason, then that is the good in itself. And again, it's not you. You're doing in itself. Fucking tongue twister, you know, because it's like there's the capital G good and then the lowercase g good. And, like, I think that the capital G good can exist by itself. Whatever. That is not the Tao Te Ching. When her work is done, she forgets it. That is why it lasts forever. So, you know, it's like, even your work doesn't define you. Your possessions don't define you. Your experience doesn't define you. Nothing defines you except for, I mean, nothing defines you. The definitions themselves are faulty. That's what humans want to do for life to make sense. Life doesn't necessarily need to make sense. It just exists. So you do what you do when you do it, and then past that, it's over. And if you do it that way, then you're going to do the best you can, and that is most likely for you. That is the most likely scenario for you to contribute immortal work. That's what I'm going to go with in my interpretation of that. Again, could be wrong on this shit. We're just going through it because I'm treating it like poetry rather than this is a poetry space, not a spiritual space. What's the difference? I don't fucking know. 3. If you overesteem great men, people become powerless. If you overvalue possessions, people begin to steal. The master leads by emptying people's minds and filling their cores, by weakening their ambition and toughening their resolve. He helps people lose everything they know, everything they desire, and creates confusion in those who think that they know. Practice not doing, and everything will fall into place. If you overesteem great men, people become powerless is like, dude, I fuck with that heavy. That's a great line. Just because it's like the idea of hero worship is like, if you're always depending on Napoleon, who's French? You know, it's like every single movement is the movement of millions. It's never the movement of one person. So if you're always giving credit to these heroes, to these like, you know, Kardashians or like whatever you want to call them, essentially nobility, you're taking away from the experience of the individuals who make up usually the larger things these people are taking from. You know, it's like Napoleon did not make militantism in France. He simply, you know, he put it in there, you know, and it's like, that's what, I don't know. When you, like, I think Edison's a great example, where it's like Edison, oh my God, he invented the light bulb. It's like, actually, Tesla was more influential with electricity in general, like, design. And there was also other inventors of the light bulb. You know, so it's like, yeah, sure, there's this great man that you can make into a story. He was such good friends with Ford. Wow. But in that, you lose the actual story of, like, the humble inventors and, like, the people who don't beg you to suck their dick. You know, it's like, for the people who are just out there, like, just, like, so hungry for attention, they are the people who become great. And, like, why? Just because they begged for it? If you overvalue possessions, people begin to steal. I mean, I feel like that one's just kind of self-explanatory. Yeah, if you have a materialistic society in which everything that fucking matters about you is about how much what you're wearing is cost and, like, how much your car is and, like, what you can fucking do and all that shit, like, dude, yeah, people are gonna steal because it's a sign of status. So it's like, yeah, dude, like, you might, it's like you have, like, a fucking, you know, like, $2,000 sculpture in your backyard. Somebody might jack that shit because it's like you're just putting such social status on these things, or even just greed on these things, that people will take them. You know, that's what your society has determined it. Meanwhile, if you do not have an emphasis on material wealth, like if everybody's fed, everybody's comfortable, and like a couple people are froofy and, like, you know, buy really fancy things, nobody really cares about material things, and, like, so there's less stealing. But meanwhile, if everybody is like, you know, I am the things that I own, people will steal them. The master leads by emptying people's minds and filling their cores, by weakening their ambition and toughening their resolve. So, I mean, I'm just going to continue harping on that. I think that this is going back to ending abstraction and going back to natural life, where it's like emptying people's minds of, like, you know, philosophy, education, like social norms, all these things that are just things that people think are expected of them, so therefore they internalize those expectations onto themselves. But instead, you just need to fill your core, where it's like, you don't need a complete, comprehensive view of the world. Who fucking understands the world? There's never been a person who gets it. There will never be a person who gets it. It's too complicated. So people get certain things, but what you really need is bravery, resolve, and just dedication. Like, if you can just get through the days, you're in a much better place than if you understand everything. Like, you know, it's just not, that's not going to be a valuable concept in terms of your long-term life strategy and your general happiness. So I think it's like, if you let go of what you were told and then, like, basically take your bravery and then, like, stop trying to succeed and just get used to the difficulties in life, I think that's a pretty good position to be in as a person. He helps people lose everything they know, everything they desire, and creates confusion in those who think that they know. Socrates. I'm just going to say Socrates. Footnote Socrates. That's all I need to say. All I know is I know nothing. Practice not doing and everything will fall into place. Hey man, like, you might have a beautiful fucking universe in your head. You might have this fantasy world in which everything worked out. You got asked to prom 15 times. Everybody loves you. You're fucking amazing. You're just the best. Might not map into the real world. So, like, trying to implement that in your day-to-day life will be very difficult. Meanwhile, if you don't have expectation, if you don't have a preconceived notion of the world, and you don't come thinking you know everything, and you just try to be a part of the world, and you just try to exist naturally, you'll probably get along, probably figure something out to do, you know? Might not be what you thought you'd do, but you'll probably figure out something to do. And we're going to end it off in 4. The Tao is like a well, used but never used up. It is like the eternal void, filled with infinite possibilities. It is hidden but always present. I don't know who gave birth to it. It is older than God. I said that was going to be the last one. I think I'm going to skip that. I mean, that's divinity. That's yeah. The Tao is the eternal. It is never exhaustible. I don't think that's a concept that you need. It's a beautiful concept. You can take it if you'd like. I highly suggest it, but also I'm not here to sell you on that. I'm just here to go through the poetry. The Tao doesn't take sides. It gives birth to both good and evil. The Master doesn't take sides. She welcomes both saints and sinners. The Tao is like a bellows. It is empty yet infinitely capable. The more you use it, the more it produces. The more you talk of it, the less you understand. Hold on to the center. I feel like this is a... I should probably have made these much bigger, but whatever. It's too late. Oh no. So I think that this is really getting to that idea that it's like, what are the quality of people? And I think that when you're looking at humanity, as somebody who loves humanity, you have to accept some difficult truths, and you just have to do some mental exercises. And one of them is the fact that good and evil are not separated, even in the individual. You have people who do awful and good things. You have somebody who might beat their wife that's an excellent, psychologist that has helped like several catatonic people get their lives together. And it's like, oh shit, like, are they a good person? Are they a bad? I don't know. Are they a bad person that does good things, or are they a good person that does bad things? It's like, that's where dualism falls apart. Is that I think in everybody there's a potential for good and a potential for evil. Good people try to understand that and do as much good as possible and limit evil. Nobody's perfect, but it does mean that like there's not the good inside and the evil outside. There's not the evil inside and the good outside. There's both at once, all the time. Everything's good and evil. The Tao doesn't make extreme things. The Tao doesn't make categories. The Tao just makes existence. It just makes things. It just creates. It's a creator. It's not a critic. The Master doesn't take sides. She welcomes both saints and sinners. Good and evil and all. There are no differences between souls. There are simply actions. There's simply existence. You can't really judge people for their intentions and what's in their head. You can only judge the action, and then it falls into hate the sin, not the sinner. You can't just really... Categorizing people is a very dangerous game. And the more that you can avoid it, the better. So... although there will be people that appear to be sinners and there will be people who appear to be evil, the rejection of them, I think, says something worse about you than it does about them. The belief in evil, I think, is maybe the most evil thing because it allows you to treat things as if they are inhuman. So if somebody is evil, I think that what you're doing to them in creating that category is also morally suspect. It's better to treat them for their actions and to punish them for their actions than to see them as an object or a finished thing. You can only see movement, you can't see object. The Tao is like a bellows. It is empty yet infinitely capable. The more you use it, the more it produces. The more you talk of it, the less you understand. Just go with it, dude. Just do what you can. You try to understand everything about your life, you're going to go nowhere. Life isn't meant to be understood, it's meant to be lived. So the more you do, the more is going to come of it, the more that's just going to spread out. But the more that you try to comprehend it logically, explain it to other people, share it, and be a part of, like a logical society, the less it's really going to make sense. This is why every academic's an idiot. Hold on to the center. Again, don't go one way or the other. Don't be an idiot. Don't be an academic. Just learn what you have to. I think that I do believe in like a kind of like the diamond from Socrates, where it is like this internal sense of taste, where it's like you need to do this, you don't need to do this. I think that everybody kind of has that, and holding on to center kind of is like taking that into account, where it's like that doesn't mean that you have to practice moderation in all things. If you fucking love playing guitar, play guitar until you die. But same shit with like making baskets. Same shit with whatever. But the point isn't to not have those sorts of things in your life. The thing is that it's like, stay in your lane. Stay in your lane. Do the things that you love. Fit in with your life. Live a natural life. Don't try to always be peeking into the things you don't really have business or no business with. Just be mindful and live easy. So that's 5 from the Tao Te Ching. Probably going to return to it sporadically. But it's awesome. Highly recommended. Translation, I don't know. Find one that you like and pick it up. It's gonna be like less than $20 usually. It's great. And now into the people. So I got Droughts. I got 2 live sets from them that are sick. We're gonna start off with the 2011 one, and then this one, I think it's just a live set. Like it's just they just played it through. 2017. Great band. Highly recommend. Obviously, check them out. Cool. Cool. So that was a live set from 2011 of them kicking ass. Here's Droughts again. 2017, so a little bit of an update. Fuck yeah. Again, Illinois band. Just great. Just great. Here's more. And that was my signal to come back on. Yeah, again, there's an introduction to the band. Check them out on Bandcamp. Check them out on everything. They got social media. They're still active. Fucking great. So happy to see also a 2011 band still kicking it. That is fire. So props out. Love you guys. Keep fucking killing it. They also did a split with William Bonney back in the day. So that shit was fire. Probably will just link that as well, because why not? Anyways, shifting gears. We're going to slow it down a little bit. We go with Thank You, I'm Sorry. This is a Minnesota band. Yeah, they're on Count Your Lucky Stars. Also cleared this with them. Great band. Lovely sound. Softer, but very approachable, very fucking catchy, honest. I don't know. Really like her vocal style. Or really like their vocal style. And obviously gets a heavy wreck. Just check them out. They also have a live set that probably won't get it on the show later. But for right now, just here's your starting point.
Talking to my mother
Cool. So that was Thank You, I'm Sorry at the DIY prom. Loon Base subscribe, or they uploaded it. Good. Go subscribe. Cool. Wrapping it up with local Michigan flavor. We got Panda House. So this is the right order. Should be. Here's the first track I want you guys to check out. They're pretty on scene. A little bit more alty. A little bit more alty probably. But anyways, check them out. And so, awesome. That was Panda House, which is a Royal Oak band, so Michigan-based. They're oh, whoops, but they're awesome. Check them out. These were demos for their third album, which should, if I remember correctly, should be coming up in August. So definitely stay tuned for that. They're definitely worth your time. Definitely worth your time. Anyways, those are the three bands we got: Droughts, the classic, Thank You, I'm Sorry, out of Minnesota, and Panda House out of Royal Oak. So that's the wrap up for the music. That's the wrap up for the week. Thanks for tuning in for High Lit. The Basics beat. Thanks for tuning in to Basics Week in High Lit. Kind of a retroactive little thing, but did a couple weed science things, and hopefully one more week of this camera setup, and then we'll get the GoPro back. Please like, comment, and subscribe. That helps out, and see you again Tuesday. So.